Hello? Hello? Good morning. We're going to start in 1 minute. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start. Thank you. Hello, good morning, Sabah el Khair. Welcome to this side event organized by the World Tourism Organization, UNWTO, at COP27. Thanks a lot for joining, and thank you very much as well for those participants connected online. Today we will have the opportunity to hear from policymakers, corporate leaders, and UN representatives on the implementation of the Glasgow Declaration on climate action in tourism. We will start with opening remarks from UNWTO and UNDP, followed by a keynote from the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities of Egypt. And we will then move on to the panel discussion with government and private sector representatives. It is therefore my pleasure to invite Ms. Zoritsa Urosevic, Executive Director of UNWTO, to deliver her welcome remarks. Dear Zoritsa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Virginia. Really good to see you all. And I was just saying to Megan, from oceans to deserts, and from north, Stockholm, Lisbon, and Sharm el-Sheikh, I think this year has been very rich for us meeting and continuing the discussion on climate issues. Distinguished delegates, it's a privilege to be here and to be part of this important summit. I am really highly encouraged to see world leaders debating and advancing their commitments even in such challenging and disrupted global socio-economic context. On behalf of UNWTO and the Secretary General, I thank UNWCCC and the government of Egypt for their hard work in organizing and hosting these vital activities and talks. As echoed by the President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi at COP27, we have the chance to show our unity in the face of the existential threat to climate change. Dear colleagues, the tourism sector is unlike never before in its commitment to climate action. Today, the climate emergency is a question of survival for our sector too, because we do emit, but we do as well have the impact of climate change. And it's been made even more challenging by the current crisis, above all, due to the tourism's high dependency on energy and its vulnerability to inflation. We have all seen this summer, while destinations are recovering at a great speed, that prices have rocketed. So there is a complex and difficult equation, and maybe this is a moment where this energy dependency is even more accurately highlighting the importance for transforming the sector and maybe doing business differently and doing business as we are going to discuss today. Maybe we are on the right track. At COP27 in Glasgow, we had the honor to announce with our partners the launch of the Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action in Tourism, which has been a broad consultation process with UN entities and of course UN member states, and as well many other actors from the public and the private arena. The declaration developed with the sector and for the sector provides a consistent framework for all tourism stakeholders to raise their climate ambitions. Today, 1 year after the launch, we are proud to have seen the declaration has inspired our sector into action, but still much needs to be done. Above all, there are many aspects to be defined. Both measurement and carbon trading frameworks are advancing, but not yet fully mainstreamed. Our sector depends on it as well, and UNWTO is fully involved in monitoring those work streams very closely, and we are part of the conversation. However, like I said, the determination is there. Over 700 stakeholders have joined the Glasgow Declaration and made tangible commitments to measure, to decarbonize, and to regenerate. Signatories represent all parts of tourism, from small to large, from south to north, west to east. National tourism authorities, such as Indonesia, which just signed during the G20, the tourism G20, Monaco, and Honduras have recently joined. Panama, Kiribati, Micronesia are also among our signatories. And Panama, we all know, is one of the 3 net positive countries in the world. And alongside them, we have welcomed many destinations, such as too many to mention here, but among them, Turismo Portugal, Visit Finland, Visit Barbados, the Netherlands Board of Tourism and Convention, Visit Scotland, Flanders, the Canary Islands, London, Vancouver, Bilbao, Barcelona, and much more. Large businesses as well, such as Booking.com, Accor, Iberostar, Expedia, Intrepid Travel, and the Travel Corporation have joined as well. And we just are welcoming the Resident Group. And many more small tour operators and hotels have signed off. And I think this is where we will have a huge task ahead of us, because SMEs are going to be facing the most difficult and challenging times. Our sector has never before witnessed so many commitments to transform producing in such a short time. This is a step in the right direction for tourism to continue being able to thrive in a changing climate. The recovery from COVID is finally here, but now we are also presented with a multi-phased crisis. We see political unrest in different parts of the world, inflation rates are jumping, energy and food dependency are high, all of which brings additional challenges. But we want to see that as opportunities. For this, our latest figures show that global tourism is on track and returned to 70% of 2019 levels by the end of this year. But this also means the window of opportunity to rethink and reform our sector is closing. We need to accelerate the implementation of climate action. Collaboration and financing will be the key to achieving our joint objective. We are just back, as I just mentioned, from the G20, where UNWTO prepared for Indonesia presidency guidelines for SMEs and communities to be leading agent for change and transformation. And among the 5 main, I can say, opportunities for transformation, climate, biodiversity, and circular economy are at the forefront of the future and the solution. Same, during the last UNWTO Executive Council in Jeddah, this month of June, the Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action in Tourism was endorsed. The Council also agreed to encourage member states to promote the declaration. Now, we will not stop, and we again encourage you to join in supporting our efforts. Today, we are going to be discussing the successful policies and corporate strategy of signatory of the Glasgow Declaration, because on the two fronts, new tourism governance is changing, and new business models are emerging. So we need to get inspired by pioneers that are leading the way to get the sector and the industry to move towards the right direction. Tomorrow, at the UNFCCC pavilion, we will be discussing regenerative approaches and innovative financing. Let me conclude by reaffirming that UNWTO remains committed to working with you to accelerate climate action, and we need to advance towards a people-centered climate action. I wish us a very interesting and productive discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zoritsa, for your inspiring opening remarks. I would now like to invite Ms. Khalida Bouzar, Assistant Secretary General and Director of the Regional Bureau for Arab States of UNDP, to deliver her opening remarks.
Thank you so much. Good morning, distinguished guests, government representative experts from all over the world. It's my pleasure to be with you today in a very busy week. Thank you, first of all, to you, Zoritsa, and your team for organizing this very important event, for your leadership on that. I think we really need to put tourism on a more resilient and sustainable trajectory, as you were saying. This is now being placed further into focus by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has severely impacted the sector and confirmed the risks of over-dependency on tourism. But I think this is already happening, that tourism is becoming more and more visible. If we look in the context of climate change, as a matter of fact, and according to your research in UNWTO, scaling up climate action in tourism is reflected now in 46% of the NDCs in 2021, while it was reflected only at 21% in 2019. So it's a big jump. So this is really important. We need to do more of this. Also in terms of, sorry, sorry, for many countries, the tourism has also become increasingly important national earners, steadily bringing billions in global economies. And in some countries, like, for example, the countries I know better in the region, Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, and Jordan, it has been providing one of the very few sources of foreign currency, hence the importance of this sector. We also have to take into consideration that before COVID-19, the tourism was the second largest economic sector on the planet, accounting for some 10% of the GDP globally. It has been a sector that focused on exponential growth and has measured its progress through foreign exchange receipt, number of tourist arrival, airlines, hotel capacities, and localized, often short-term and in many cases informal employment. But if COVID has been challenging, if it has taught us something, is the fact that we cannot go back to where we were before COVID, and we need to build back better. However, it's critical to rethink and restart more sustainable tourism models. We need a reset, as a matter of fact. In many instances, rethinking tourism essentially equates to rethinking the development model of one country. It's not about looking only at tourism. We need development models that where the logic of extraction, depletion of resources, centralizing power at the expense of well-being of local communities is not only unsustainable, but exposes the countries to external shocks, as it was the case during COVID. Tourism holds a unique opportunities now to evolve into a sustainable engine for economic development. The sector can generate quality jobs for durable growth, reduce poverty, and often incentives for environment conservation. In sum, it can be a triple win to help countries transition towards more inclusive, resilient economies. Investing in new markets and services such as ecotourism, which is estimated to be worth as much as 100 billion a year, sustainable agriculture, water and energy efficiency can become more than just vehicles to promote the competitiveness of local enterprises, but an effort to decarbonize, to tackle pollution, grow new economic and circular markets, and develop a more climate resilient industry that will work in harmony with nature. For this, we need to think about innovative financing mechanisms such as green bonds, impact investment, energy efficiency lending facilities, and smart incentive for eco-certification. All these are powerful tools to leverage private capital and align investment in the sector towards new directions for the sectors and for the SDGs. The tourism also, I wanted to mention the informality of the jobs. The tourism sector also absorbs large pools of informal labor. So any decline in the sector will disproportionately harm the working poor, further exacerbate poverty and vulnerability. So this has been a major issue during COVID because a lot of the informal workers were not supported by safety net by the government, to the exception of few countries, at least in the region I know about, Morocco. New sustainable tourism and new finance models should ensure more benefit flows to the country, yes, but to communities, to the workers themselves, and to the environment. This will also require to rethink the data and intelligence normally used by the sector and expand beyond the existing success metrics of arrival, capacity, and foreign exchange. And here I'm saying we need to look at quantity, but we need also to take into consideration quality. As UNDP, we have been working in the sector, but we have been more specifically supporting government partners in Dominican Republic, Thailand, Nepal, Maldives, and last but not least, obviously, Egypt, in navigating the great uncertainties in the tourism industry during and post-pandemic. You must have seen the solar panels and waste treatment here in the COP and in the hotels, and we were leading on that, for example. So we will continue after COP to turn Sharm el-Sheikh as a green and prime touristic destination. We have also another example that was that benefited from a big event this week. It's all about the coral reef program for the Gulf of Aqaba and the Red Sea. We are working with UNDP, with UNFCCC and partners in Jordan and Egypt, and we support the Global Coral Reef Fund. It's as simple as the coral reef system of the region, a key part of our natural heritage, but also a major base that being more eco-tourist to this region. To conclude, I would like maybe to say, to leave a few key messages, if you allow me. Tourism is not a single sector. We should rethink it as a unique opportunity for system transformation and pathways for sustainable economic development. Second, we need collective action to transition to sustainable tourism models. Many of the innovation solutions and new pathways will require whole of government approaches and should not and cannot be the only responsibility of tourism ministries. And this is a challenge, but maybe an opportunity. We also need to be bold and inclusive in partnering with public and private sector to not only secure needed national and international finance to meet the challenges and impact at scale, but also ensure that benefits are reaching the more vulnerable communities, i.e. to be as inclusive as possible. In all these areas, many countries are already taking the lead, and we are proud of UNDP to be supporting them and to continue further collaboration with the UN World Tourism Organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bouzar. Thank you, Ms. Urosevic, for framing today's discussion. It is now time for the keynote intervention from the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities of Egypt, which will be delivered by Dr. Nashwa Talat, advisor to the Minister of Tourism for Sustainable Development. Dr. Talat, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Egypt. It's my pleasure to participate in such an important event, gathering eminent specialists in sustainable tourism and UN officials and guests. Actually, we are indeed proud to have achieved the highest recovery rates in tourism industry after COVID-19. Egypt has placed the concept of sustainability as a key strategic element in the further development and growth in Egypt. The strategy of Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities for Sustainable Development is based on achieving the sustainability of tourism and archaeological activity in line with the UN goals for sustainable development and in line with the national goals of the Sustainable Development Plan for Egypt 2030. A specialized program, the Green Tourism Unit, was created 2014 to help build institutional capacity within the ministry and to coordinate with internal and external public and private stakeholders that would help push green transformation forward, as well as all and various aspects of sustainability, environmental, economic, and social. We also sponsored the Green Star Hotel program, which is one of the environmental accreditation certifications designed especially for the hotel sector in Egypt, according to internationally recognized standards. The program aims to distinguish hotel establishments that apply sustainability standards, which will raise the capacity of the Egyptian tourism sector to meet the increasing demand for sustainable tourism activities, while enhancing also the local capacity to meet the challenges of climate change. More than 40% of the points that can be obtained in this program are related to implementation of methods of using technologies aimed at reducing energy and water consumption, which directly related to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Now there are 119 certified Green Star hotels all over Egypt. Some of the mitigation actions that we implemented in pilot hotels to face the challenges of climate change include solar water heaters, solar PV, LED lighting, AC shading, water savers, and motion sensors. Such actions help to save around 8 million kilowatt-hour per year, and greenhouse gas emissions reductions about 4,200 tons carbon dioxide annually. Another outreach that Egypt has adopted is the green fence, environmental standards which help to protect our coral reefs from the negative impact associated with tourist activities. Green Fence is the only internationally recognized sustainable management program for diving and snorkeling operators. Egypt joined the Green Fence network in early 2020, and now we have 19 diving centers certified as Green Fence. Moreover, the human capital is a key player in the green transformation. A capacity building program was designed and implemented to enhance the awareness and technical skills. As you see, the journey has started, and yet there is a lot to be done that needs a lot of financing and technical support. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Talat, for providing insights from Egypt as the host of COP27. We will now move into the panel discussion, which will be moderated by Dr. Dirk Glesser, Director of the Sustainable Development of Tourism Department of UNWTO.
Thank you, Virginia, very much, and thank you, Zoritsa, for the opening of our today's meeting here at COP27. I am very grateful for your participation and the participation of our panelists. And I wanted to explain why I am grateful. Because 2 years ago at COP25, we presented to you the scenario how the tourism sector would evolve against the then current ambition. And we found that the tourism sector would increase the emissions by at least 25% if the ambition wouldn't change to the year 2030. We concluded this finding, which we elaborated together with the International Transportation Forum of OECD, by calling for a higher ambition in the tourism sector, contrasting the current against the higher ambition. At COP26 last year, we presented the work of many people, very committed people in the tourism sector, and I wanted to thank them very much, and Jeremy is one of them here in the room. I thank you very much for the contribution to that, having formed an alliance and pledging a high ambition. That is become known nowadays as the Glasgow Declaration. The Glasgow Declaration was our way of showing that high ambition in the tourism sector, in tourism policies, is possible. And we wanted to show not only that commitment at COP26, but also trigger that the sector as such can unite behind that commitment, a very specific commitment on a very important resource. As Zoritsa mentioned before, the number of signatories have increased significantly since then. And here today at COP27, we wanted to present the message of those who are doing the work on the ground, the so-called implementation. And I'm very grateful to my panelists here. Many of them are attending the COP only to share this message today on behalf of the tourism sector. And they all have very specific, different stories to share. They are all signatories of the Glasgow Declaration. They are all committed to this high ambition scenario. And I wanted to thank them already at this stage before their presentation for this commitment. But bear that please in mind. They are representatives of a sector, leaders of a transformation for which we are all very grateful. But at the same time, we know that the tourism sector has to follow this path to meet what we all have agreed, the Paris Agreement. With that, I have right now the opportunity and the pleasure to present to you one of the signatories. They come as a tandem, the Secretary of State for Environment and Land Management of the state of Guanajuato in Mexico, Ms. María Isabel Ortiz Mantilla. She is coming with her homologo in tourism, the Secretary of Tourism of the state of Guanajuato, Mr. Juan José Álvarez Brunel. They both have a compelling story to tell from a very important destination in Mexico. And I wanted to ask Marisa, the very first question, as we know that climate action is not a core competence of the tourism sector, that is actually a competence of other areas of government. What are you doing uniquely in Guanajuato, and what you can share as a signatory here as an inspiration to the participants? Marisa.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I would like to speak in Spanish, and Dirk will help us with the translation. Guanajuato está en el centro de México. Somos el corazón de México, un país megadiverso.
Guanajuato is in the center of Mexico. It's a place, a mega center of activities in Mexico. And they are the center of the mega diversidad of Mexico and biodiversity.
El día de hoy podríamos hablar sobre las emisiones del sector turístico.
Today we will speak about the carbon emissions,
Pero lo más importante es hablar de la dependencia que el sector turístico tiene hacia la biodiversidad.
but I will also speak about the dependency of the tourism sector on biodiversity.
El turismo que se hace con la identidad que dan los recursos naturales de un lugar es el que permite generar la gastronomía, la cultura, y eso es lo que busca cada uno de los seres humanos que recorre el mundo.
As you will realize, I'm not a professional interpreter.
Sorry.
So the center, Marisa, the center of your activities is focusing, can you just repeat that, please?
La biodiversidad es lo que le da la identidad a un sitio, y esa biodiversidad es lo que genera la cultura, la gastronomía, y ese es el atractivo turístico.
The biodiversity is actually which is making a place unique, and this uniqueness is actually the attractiveness for tourism and gastronomy.
Pero también el turismo es verdaderamente muy vulnerable. La pandemia fue un claro ejemplo.
But tourism is also very vulnerable, and the pandemic was a very clear example of that.
Y es muy vulnerable ante el cambio climático.
It is very vulnerable to the climate change.
Cada destino tiene que adaptarse verdaderamente a este fenómeno.
Every destination has to adapt to this phenomenon,
Pero en general tenemos que prepararnos a la poca disponibilidad de agua,
and especially we have to prepare for the scarcity of water,
pérdida del atractivo natural
the loss of natural attractiveness,
y el mal confort térmico o el incremento de temperatura.
and
La pérdida de confort térmico.
and the loss of comfort related to temperatures.
Por ello, en Guanajuato
Because of that, in Guanajuato,
trabajamos en conjunto la Secretaría de Turismo y la Secretaría de Medio Ambiente
we work in very close cooperation with the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Environment
en un programa que le llamamos Adaptur,
in a program which we are calling Adaptour,
donde trabajamos el gobierno estatal o gobierno subnacional o regional,
where we as a subnational government work,
la Secretaría de Turismo, la Secretaría de Medio Ambiente,
the Secretary of Tourism and the Secretary of Environment,
el municipio de San Miguel de Allende,
the municipality of San Miguel de Allende,
que es una de las ciudades patrimonio de la humanidad,
which is one of the cities of the cultural and global cultural heritage,
organizaciones de la sociedad civil,
civil society organizations,
habitantes de las comunidades,
the inhabitants of those communities,
el sector empresarial,
the private sector,
trabajando en programas, políticas, estudios, metodologías y medidas de adaptación.
in the programs, the policies, the studies, methodologies, and the methods of adaptation.
Me voy a concentrar exclusivamente en las medidas de adaptación por ser lo más importante para reducir el estrés hídrico.
I will concentrate right now in my elaboration on the measures of adaptation, as they are the most important measures.
El sector privado acompañó a los habitantes de las comunidades
The private sector accompanied the civil societies
de los habitantes de excomunidades, o sea, los que
and the
habitan
inhabitants in those local communities
en los puntos donde necesitábamos hacer acciones de recarga de acuíferos.
where we have in the points of the recharging.
¿Recarga de acuíferos? Recargas de acuíferos, o sea, los puntos donde permite recuperar el agua, el valor del agua, disminuye el estrés hídrico, si quieres.
To reduce the stress, the stress, environmental stress, correct?
Yes. Este fue sumamente exitoso, reconocido a nivel nacional por ser un programa de colaboración y de verdaderamente implementación de la adaptación.
This was a very successful project, nationally recognized for being a real implementation of the adaptation.
Por ello lo hemos estado repitiendo en otros puntos del Estado.
Because of that, we repeated that in other areas of intervention in the state.
40 hectáreas de la Sierra de Guanajuato,
40 hectares of forest of Guanajuato,
con estrategias de recuperación de suelos,
with recuperation strategies of the deforested areas,
mejoramiento de la capacidad de nuestras presas de almacenamiento.
and improved almacenamiento, storage of water.
Yes. Y lo más importante es que a partir de ello hemos transformado las actividades que realizan los habitantes de las áreas naturales protegidas.
And improved over there the activities of the local population in natural spaces.
Yes. Ellos se dedicaban a la deforestación, a la leña, al carbón,
These people before focused on deforestation and taking wood for firewood and agriculture.
ahora se dedican a turismo de naturaleza,
Now they dedicate their time and resources to nature-based tourism
generación de productos locales orgánicos,
and building nature-based tourism and organic products,
y establecimiento de viveros comunitarios de especies nativas.
and creation of
Viveros.
uh,
¿Producción de planta?
yes, plantations.
Continuamos con estas acciones y los retos son enormes, pero lo más importante es transformar en la recuperación verde
We continue with this line of action, and the most important is the green transformation,
generando alianzas, gobierno, sociedad civil, iniciativa privada y los habitantes de cada una de las áreas naturales.
creating over there alliances between the public sector, civil society, the private sector, and
Los habitantes de las áreas
the
naturales.
local population.
Los retos es intervenir ahora 3,000 hectáreas,
Our objective right now is to convert 3,000 hectares,
trabajar en 15 municipios en 10 áreas naturales protegidas,
and to work in 15 municipalities in 10 natural protected areas,
producir 100,000 plantas de agave,
to produce 100,000 agave plants,
y que al menos 100 familias sean capacitadas para transformar estas comunidades.
and that at least 100 families are transformed to take this, where? That 100 families are receiving the help to transform in these more sustainable actions.
Por último, solamente quisiera cerrar con las oportunidades que el sector turístico tiene en materia de cambio climático.
Now I wanted to close by focusing on the potentials the tourism sector has in climate action.
El turismo puede ayudar a sensibilizar sobre la riqueza natural de un sitio,
The tourism sector can sensitize about the values of the biodiversity,
la importancia que los ecosistemas y la biodiversidad tiene en la sobrevivencia humana,
the importance ecosystems and biodiversity have for the livelihoods of human beings,
y también la vulnerabilidad que tenemos como humanidad.
and at the same time stressing the vulnerability humans have towards these threats.
Además, es un punto de unión entre las actividades humanas y las actividades naturales.
And it is, a union between the human activities and nature.
Y para ello yo quisiera cerrar. El turismo nos puede ayudar verdaderamente a enfatizar la importancia que tiene la adaptación basada en ecosistemas, la adaptación basada en comunidades y la adaptación basada en reducción de riesgos de desastres.
And to close, and to stress over there the importance of the tourism sector when it comes to climate and climate change, and to focus on the adaptation based on ecosystems, the adaptation based on communities, and the adaptation based on the reduction of natural disasters.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dirk. Sorry for this one.
Okay. I'm sorry for not being a trained natural interpreter, and I hope I brought across at least the core message Marisa wanted to convey to us. As the Secretary of Environment and Land Management, she is in charge of the competences and interfaces there with Juan José Álvarez, who represents the government from the tourism perspective. And Juan José, you are involved in measuring impacts of tourism for a very long time. Guanajuato is one of the leading destinations around the world measuring sustainability and trying to produce evidence. Now, you are cooperating also for that very intensively with the private sector. Can you share with us what are your plans right now to base your policies on this evidence?
Thank you, Dirk, and I first of all would like to thank UNWTO for the invitation of being here at this panel and share with you what Guanajuato State in Mexico is doing in collaboration with the Secretary of Medio Ambiente, Environment, Secretary Marisa. And of course, also thank very briefly our host country and all the panelists, all the public, and especially all the virtual audiences that are following this transmission, because it's very, very important for Guanajuato that is known, is shared with the world what we're doing in this matter. I'll have to say that Guanajuato is committed to the implementing sustainable measures through tourism in all instances because of what the public, the 2019-2024 government plan, it is in place right now. As my colleague Marisa said, Guanajuato stands in tourism, and it means a little bit over 200,000 employees and about 9% of the state GDP. So it is a very important drive economic force that it's making well, very, very important that tourism gets involved into this. I will have to say that awareness plus involvement equals sector resilience. And that is why Guanajuato has become part of the international network of sustainable tourism observatories back in 2010. And since then, along with this collaboration with the WTO, we have developed what it's become a very important key for measures of what the tourism segment is evolving into it. Since 2015, Guanajuato has had a sustainable focus into tourism, and that has unfolded into a sustainable, we are the only state in Mexico that have a sustainable tourism program in place. Now, having a program doesn't mean that we go and develop it as just by the sake of having it on writing. So what we did is back in the 2020, while the pandemic, we took advantage of those times that we were just doing office from home, and developed a training program for all our employees, the first 3 levels, so that we understood what sustainability meant. And once that we knew what it was all about, then we developed an internal policy of sustainability, so that now, on writing, we were on the obligation of keeping up with this pushing into sustainable measures. Of course, the work that we do together with the environmental agency of the state, it's a very, very important part of it, because of course we understand tourism, but not necessarily understand how the sustainability measures have to be implemented. And that is something that Guanajuato, it's being the leader in the country on working together, but not only doing that, but making sure that it happens constantly. And of course, it is very important that the private sector gets involved into the measures of this happening and on the everyday life in their sector. And for that, we have been pushing so that they understand that their future, their businesses lay on having these measures implemented, because if we don't preserve it, then they're not going to be able to have something to share with tourism as they come into our territory. So in 2019, we implemented a program to make sure, in a very direct and a very strategic way, to make sure that the sector is aware of what it means, not only to say or talk about sustainability, but actually make it happen. And that involvement is what I meant that is the driving force of why Guanajuato is in that path. Of course, we have a great opportunity to develop that segment, and that is because we have found that tourism after pandemic has related Guanajuato into 9 specific segments. We are located, for those of you that don't know where Guanajuato is located, Mexico's central part, it's 3 hours north of Mexico City. We have no beaches, but we do have cultural, we have ennotourism, we have MICE, which is the segment of the industry of reunions. Of course, we have a big strip of industrial cities. We have wellness. We have nature, of course. And out of those 20% of our territory that is set on natural protected area, and we just heard of a ministry or environmental agency talked about that. That is providing us the scope of touristic attractions that we need to put in place, and that is why this climate change, it means business for tourism. We have developed through the fact of our tourism observatory data, which includes not only the private sector, what we do internally on the Ministry of Tourism, but also the academy and of course international organizations provide us with the data that we gather constantly, so that focusing on those 9 segments, we are very specifically developing tools that will give specific data to those people, and they can make their own decisions. Of course, this implementation that we are all talking about, and that is, well, the main line of this COP27, means these alliances that I already said that we have. Yes, the OMT, yes, the WTTC, of course, within the state and within the country, how we're getting those together. Of course, some of those implementations that we have committed with are not only the Sustainable Tourism Program, the internal sustainable policy that has given us the commitment to pursue the implementation no matter what we do in terms of tourism with the private sector, but also to recognize the sustainable action program that we have placed for our private sector to join and to really share what they're doing, so that there's a sort of a branding, let's say, that they can be using as they go through all the measures and all the commitments that it means. There won't be any support from our ministry to any event happening on the tourism sector that has no proof of the implementation of sustainable measures. That is the way we have found that the private sector is going to lean forward into making sure that those measures really get implemented, and that they have to prove that that is happening as they are carrying on any of the 9 segments efforts that we have in tourism. Of course, we have joined the Glasgow Declaration recently in Guanajuato, where we were hosting the Sustainable and Social Summit back in July, I believe, this year. And there we joined this declaration because we believe that that is the way to go for tourism. Of course, our government, our governor has been very upfront into the sustainability measures, and he has put up a grant for 200 million pesos, which is about $10 million, for the private sector. It doesn't have to be tourism; it has to be all across the line, so that they can purchase solar panels and change at least that means of getting a sustainable power. So I will say that not only the opportunity to share with within the COP27 what we're doing in Guanajuato is important for the state, it's important for our country, and of course what we say constantly on a tourism line is that in Guanajuato we live great stories, and we do it by taking care of our natural greatness. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share with you what we're doing in Guanajuato and this joint effort at the state level. And of course, we are bringing it up to our federal level as well. Thank you very much.
Juan, José, Marisa, thank you very much for this statement from the 2 different perspectives. The partnerships you outlined and the logic you shared with us on the climate action in a destination at subnational level, which is for us a very important level of implementation of action of sustainability. I thank you very much, and I turn right now to my next speaker, the Canary Islands, and another very important destination, a very important tourism destination within Europe with a long history of tourism, which joined the Glasgow Declaration on the last week of October. We have here the pleasure today to have Ms. Yaiza Castilla Herrera, the Minister of Tourism, Industry and Trade of the Government of the Canary Islands of Spain. Yaiza, first of all, congratulations also to join the Glasgow Declaration and as such an important tourism destination to have developed a climate action plan. And it would be for us now very interesting that you share some of the insights with others with the aim of inspiring how you spoke to stakeholders. How did you get these stakeholders involved when you developed a climate action plan, and what does that mean for your destination?
Thank you very much, dear. Thank you very much for your congratulations, and thank you very much for the invitation to the Canary Islands at COP27. Really, it is an honor to be here at COP27 and to be able to share with the prestigious panel different perspectives of tourism model. In fact, firstly, I must say that the decarbonization of the Canary Island, the tourist activity in particularity, is a strategic objective for our government of the first order. In March 2021, we formalized a strategy of the transformation of the Canary Islands tourism model, which is recognized here. Since then, we haven't stopped working on it. As an island territory, and due to its geographical location, the Canary Islands are particularly vulnerable to the effects of the climate change. Moreover, tourism is main industry, and we boast one most of exceptional subtropical climate unmatched in the world. For example, some important data, in my opinion, and I think it's important to share in this panel. 40% of employment and 35% of the Canary Islands GDP depend on an activity is with almost zero seasonality, thanks to factors such as the trade winds and the Canary Current Sea. These are some of the main reasons for our successes. I believe that our colleague of Iberostar group, which has been committing to the destination, the Canary Islands, for many years, knows a lot about this. This reality, this tourist success, is now danger. And we must take co-responsibility to look at solution. We calculate, for example, that in 2019, that the carbon footprint of Canary Island tourist activity, not including air and sea traffic, emitted 1.850 million tons of CO2. And among them we have must reduce through a correct strategy of measurement, evaluation, and information exchange continuously with a 50% target for 2030. That is why our adherence of the Glasgow Declaration and climate action in tourism seemed as an extraordinary opportunity for us, for Canary Island, to commit ourselves to a global and coordinated visions to face the great challenge of climate change. We have finalized our climate action plan even before ratifying our adherence as a destination. How did we do it? A plan which approved and presented on 24 October together with the 7 Canarian insular government and the business organization of the entire sector, more than 30. Because the whole Canary Islands destination is aware of the fight against the climate change and the achievement of the more sustainable destination. This climate action plan includes the following 4 points, among others. Number 1, a digital application designed because of a specific methodology adapted to the needs of the destination and tested in a pilot experience with 35 corporations in the Canary Islands to the tourists. This tool will enable companies to measure their own carbon footprint free of charge. It will also enable real information to be collected and consolidated on the mission of the Canary Island tourist activity. Number 2, Sustainability Office. For more, we will have a Sustainability Office. We will provide advice and support all tourist companies in the Canary Islands. Number 3, a catalog. We have designed a catalog with more than 220 emission reduction measures to be applied depending on type of activity. And number 4, funding lines. We have established different funding lines to support local business and public institutions in the field of energy efficiency and circular economy. In 2023, this line have 170 million euros. In conclusion, we plan, we promote, we join forces, and we also commit ourselves to its direct implementation. I think that the claim is perfect together for the implementation. Thank you very much.
Yaiza, thank you very much for this diving into a plan with so much passion and demonstrating over here how you are transforming the tourism sector in partnership, which is one of the major challenges of making a plan actually relevant and executing beyond the instruments you have available for that plan and inspire the destination, inspire those who are working with you as a destination. And with that, I'm preparing the floor for my next speaker, a very distinguished person, Megan Morikawa. She is the Global Director of Sustainability of the Sustainability Office at the Iberostar Group. And Megan, we know that Iberostar is innovating in the area of sustainability, leading in many of the discussions, and you are very curious to engage in subject areas ahead of other industry players, but you are always open and cooperate. And I wonder right now, as you just released several days ago, 2 days ago, if I'm correctly, if I know that correctly, the decarbonization roadmap for Iberostar, and we are very curious right now to hear from such an important player like Iberostar, how that decarbonization roadmap sees the destinations which spoke before you, and how that inspires others for their climate action.
Thank you very much, Dirk, and distinguished panelists and our speakers. It's really an honor to be here today to speak on behalf of the private sector and to hopefully demonstrate this step of implementation, right? If this is the COP of implementation, as signatories, one of the first signatories of the Glasgow Declaration last year, we had 1 year to be able to ensure that we were delivering our climate action plan, and we're very pleased 2 days ago to have launched our decarbonization roadmap. But I'll pause here for a second. My name is Dr. Megan Morikawa, and I'm here on behalf of Iberostar Group, a Spanish-based luxury hotel chain, on behalf of our Chief Sustainability Officer and Co-Vice Chairman, Gloria Fluxà, who unfortunately could not be here with us today. But I'm very enthusiastic to speak a little bit about what this decarbonization strategy details and how we hope that can be an inspiration for others in the accommodation sector. But I really want to demonstrate that just as our other panelists have showcased, this level of ambition is impossible to achieve without very, very effective partnerships with the public sector. And so to give us a sense of what it is that we had just launched, Iberostar estimated that in 2019, across our roughly 100 hotels in 14 countries around the world, we had a carbon footprint of about 1 million metric tons per year. That not only includes our direct emissions and the emissions from our electricity, our scope 1 and scope 2, but also our supply chain, our purchase of goods and services, our investments in construction. And actually we found that scope 3, all of the things that are a part of our supply chain, was around 78% of our entire carbon footprint of that roughly 1 million metric tons. So when we worked to commit to delivering our climate action plan, I think one of the important lessons to draw from what we've done at Iberostar is that this journey can happen relatively quickly for a business. In 2018, our materiality assessment demonstrated that exposure to climate change was not as strong of a topic to our stakeholders or our organization. And now, only 4 years later, we're delivering what we see as the accommodation sector's most ambitious decarbonization strategy and plan, which details, and it was validated by SBTi this October, an 85% reduction of that scope 1 and 2 emissions and a 50% reduction of those scope 3 emissions by 2030. That level of ambition showcases that it is possible for an accommodation provider to not only halve emissions by 2030, we plan to do this decarbonization strategy over 8 years, but to halve emissions without yet relying on traditional carbon offsets as part of their strategy. However, in 2020, we announced that Iberostar would also reach carbon neutrality by 2030. And by 2030, even with that level of ambition of decarbonization, we still expect to have around a 430,000 metric ton carbon footprint, 96% of that coming from our supply chain, the food that we're using, the materials that are a part of our service. And so we also committed to offset those emissions. We could have chosen to purchase offsets in the market that could have been focused on direct active capture, which we think is a really important technology. But given the importance of biodiversity and adaptation to tourism, we decided that we wanted to do this via nature-based solutions. And we've also announced that at the UN Ocean Conference, which was the last instance when we were very happy to be presenting our coastal health roadmap, that we would offset those emissions by protecting and restoring nature in our destinations. Not only working to build in the climate mitigation side of that work, but also boost adaptation by ensuring that there is secure financing for the protection of biodiversity in the places where we operate. However, given all of this ambition, we're focusing very heavily on looking inwards first, whether that be in our 11 pathways of decarbonization that we detail in this roadmap, focusing on massive electrification. We expect to have nearly 90%, or an average ratio of 90% of our hotels electrified by 2030. We also are massively reducing our energy consumption. We have an objective to reduce our kilowatt hour per stay by 35% only in those 8 years. But we find that 2/3 of our ambition to reduce our emissions from Scope 1 and Scope 2 depend on the renewable energy transition of our destinations. In fact, we're looking to add up to 220 megawatts of renewable energy in places that span from Cuba to the Dominican Republic, to Jamaica, to Morocco, to Spain, locations where we want to be the industry requests to say, let's find ways together to work on tourism being a driver for renewable energy transitions in our destinations. If we look at our Scope 3 emissions, we find that the amount of emissions from the embodied carbon from the food and beverage that we use in our services actually equates to larger than all of the emissions from our consumption of electricity. And it will be impossible for us to decarbonize the emissions from our food systems without also engaging in our supply chain, engaging in agriculture, and having these industry-to-industry dialogues. And that really is the message that I want to demonstrate here. I suppose I can summarize this into 3 components. The first was that for a business of our size and scale to be able to achieve this level of ambition, we needed to have not only enlightened leadership, but we also needed capacity to be able to make this strategy a reality. It's a pleasure to have with us our 3 strategy directors who help us to realize this, our climate change manager, circular economy strategy director, who focuses on our Scope 3, and coastal health strategy director, who focuses on the nature-based compensation. But our office now contains 27 individuals who are focused full-time on developing our sustainability strategy and implementing that throughout the hotel. So capacity for private sector was necessary for us to turn that enlightened leadership into direct action. But the second message is that it will be impossible, and we hope you hold us accountable at Iberostar to achieve our ambition if we can't get these public and private partnerships correct, if we can't engage industry to industry and with our destinations to ensure that this development can occur. And finally, I really want to demonstrate that action is possible very, very quickly within our organization, and we need to really ensure that our pursuit of perfection in measurement is not the enemy of progress, right? We want to avoid working to know 5 years from now, from perfect measurement of our carbon footprint, that we should be reducing our energy consumption. We need to parallel track both of these things at the same time, and you can see some of that demonstrated in our roadmap. But it's a real pleasure to speak with these panelists today. I'm very much looking forward to finding ways that we can continue to build these partnerships, and hope that you also can dive into some of the details around how we plan to achieve that ambition of decarbonization and carbon neutrality by 2030. Thank you.
Megan, thank you very much for these inspiring words on the actions you are taking, and stressing over here the need for partnership with the public sector, which is key to the success when you are looking beyond, as you pointed out over there, the initial scopes you are influencing and where you actually depend on cooperation. And that is very much appreciated, and it's a second message this panel wants to send, especially at subnational level, how that is working for the private sector and the company operating at international level, how important you see the subnational level in your cooperation, public-private sector, not just demanding, but interacting, exchanging over their evidence, exchanging over their the needs, and how the private sector is seen by the public sector as a partner of implementation of climate action. And that as a launch partner is very inspiring to see the progress you have made. And it allows me right now to introduce then the next panelist, Glenn Maciok. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. And Glenn, it's such a pleasure to see another launch partner here, SHA, being present this year at the implementation statements, joining us at the implementation statements. And you at SHA, you have done a lot with the hotel Carbon Measurement Initiative, better known as HCMI, but the long version is what is the correct reference to it. You have inspired the sector. You are representing over there many leading hotel companies in the alliance, and you are supporting their efforts of measuring and advancing carbon. Glenn, as another launch partner next to Iberostar, it's a pleasure to have you here, and please let us know what right now happened to HCMI and the update you just released recently.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's a tough act to follow with all the distinguished guests here on the stage, but also Megan, one of our proud partners within the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, and we're honored to be a part of the movement to engage the Glasgow Declaration from the industry's perspective. We convene all the leading hotel companies in the world to really talk about sustainability, and both from a people and a planet agenda, but we've also adopted this whole notion of place, and that's why it's so great to hear the destinations on the stage. We're committed to the Glasgow Declaration of having the carbon emissions by 2030, and we're providing a great deal of support to our hotel partners around their development of their climate action plans and how to effectively report those action plans, and to actually work in a very collaborative, pre-competitive way to come up with solutions to achieve the results we want to see. This past year, we had the good fortune to launch the Pathway to Net Positive Hospitality. This is a practical set of tools and resources that enable a hotel to go beyond net zero and actually look at giving back more than you take from the industry, and giving back to community, giving back to stakeholders that support the industry, but actually making the industry a prosperous one that is much more holistic in its approach. Very pleased to say all the major CEO companies supported that philosophy in the adoption of that, and that was adopted in March of this year at ITB Berlin, which is the leading tourism convening conference in the world. Iberostar being one of them, and it's so good to see the whole team here and your leadership in that regard. We also, as Dirk alluded to, updated for the first time in 10 years the Hotel Carbon Measurement Initiative. We had to really look at the new protocols, the new GHG protocols, and actually adopt more activities around reporting and investing in energy renewables, which was not conceived 10 years ago in its effort, but also embarked on looking at how we measure Scope 3. So there is elements of the Scope 3, and this next year we are going to adopt a much more comprehensive set of tools to address Scope 3 measurement, which is a very complex exercise, as we all share. But one of the things that wasn't happening 10 years ago, and what has happened since, is there are 13 agencies around the world that have also incorporated the HCMI into their support tools. It's really important that we break down the silos and that we actually have a common set of measures around a set of tools, and I'm pleased to say that the HCMI is the most used tool in the world when it comes to carbon measure. And finally, I want to just reference the fact in the last couple of months we have formalized a number of leading partnerships and protocols between organizations to help us come up with solutions for this effort that we have in front of us. And these agreements are beyond just, handshakes and sweet talk, basically. This is about really getting down to business and, again, breaking down those silos of partnerships so that we can actually succeed in this effort. It cannot be done individually as a group, but we see very importantly to help scale and have impact, we have to have those partnerships, and we're very, very proud of the fact that we were able to work on that and get those key measures in place as a firm foundation for the next year's efforts to achieve the Glasgow Agreement. So thank you for this opportunity to share what's happening at the Alliance. There's so much more, but with limited time, I'll leave it there.
Glenn. Susan, if you, Glenn, fantastic. Thank you for this very important message. Susan, if you allow me one thing right now, technically, I want to give the floor to the Deputy Executive Secretary of UN Climate Change, UNFCCC, Mr. Ovais Sarmad, who is very much pressured by time, and then we return to you. Mr. Ovais Sarmad, it's a very great pleasure to have you here. You are a very reliable partner. You joined us at COP25, COP26. We are hopefully reporting to you the implementation UNFCCC is looking for, and we are very thankful for your personal support, the support of the Secretariat, and the very good people you have helping you to make the work happening. Miguel is one of the stars among your team for us. Can we ask you right now to join us to address not the closing remarks, but your intervention, as I heard you are very pressed by time? Yes, please. Susan, that's fine.
A very warm good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates and WTO, Dirk and others who are here, and other panelists. I don't want to name all of them, but great pleasure for me to be here on behalf of UNFCCC, and I really hope that you all are finding the COP27 here in Sharm el-Sheikh useful, productive, and very importantly, meaningful to push for the implementation that this COP is all about. But coming to our relationship with World Tourism Organization, as Dirk already said, it's extremely meaningful, extremely important. We are collaborating, but we absolutely need to do more. The Glasgow Declaration, which you already heard, has definitely increased the profile of the role of tourism industry as a climate action partner, as a climate action agency to deliver the impact that they can do, and they're already doing, which is extremely important. It provides the very needed forum for interactions among the many and diverse stakeholders that WTO provides support to and engages with. Because it's all about looking for solutions, and solutions that has to be innovative and implement at scale at pace, because if we are to remain within the 1.5 degree limit, it's not a target, it's a limit, then we have to really step up our efforts to make transformative changes across all sectors. And as governments look for options to enhance their ambition for the nationally determined contributions and look into additional opportunities to avoid or to reduce emissions, initiatives such as this, supported by the Glasgow Declaration of WTO, can help them do that. With the support of the experts involved in this initiative, including the private sector, and very importantly, the private sector, NGOs and others, and the subnational governments like the Canary Islands, may find additional ways to strengthen their commitments. We very much look forward to working very closely with you and supporting WTO along the way. And as you have already heard earlier, the tourism industry has demonstrated its resilience. It has survived the pandemic and is now on track to return to 70% of the 2019 levels by the end of this year. This is amazing news when 1 in 10 jobs globally are dependent on tourism sector. But the industry still faces an even bigger challenge, which is the triple planetary crisis. The work is not over, it has just begun for all of us and for all sectors. The Glasgow Declaration is a guide, one built by the industry, which the industry can adapt and enhance to face this challenge. We encourage all of you to do everything in your power to accelerate climate action. Your industry in the world depends on it. And lastly, I would like to congratulate all of you. I don't know what's happening with the system here, but once again, I wish you all the very best. Thank you very much, Dirk. With apologies.
Mr. Ovais, Sarmad, thank you so much for your kind words and the recognition of the efforts of the tourism sector and being here with us. Susanetti, I owe you a big one. The next time you are at the beginning of any panel I moderate. Susan, thank you very much. You are representing another launch partner, Intrepid Travel, of the Glasgow Declaration, and you are doing, as a tour operator over there, fantastic things. Susan, please tell us what that means for you and the audience.
Cool. Thank you very much. Great question, and I'm really pleased to tackle this and share a bit more today. So Intrepid is the world's largest adventure travel company, which operates actually 1,000 trips across all 7 continents. Intrepid is really recognized as a leader in sustainable travel, and we have been around since 1989. But regardless, Intrepid recognized that we really have an impact on the environment, and it's really committed to ongoing decarbonization across our operations, our offices, but most importantly across our trips and the wider value chain. And the most significant way we are doing that is through our science-based targets and our commitment to Scope 3 emissions. So there are actually 2 main things that I wanted to share with you today. One is the importance of measurement to support action, and the second one is about addressing emissions, and that's within your tourism supply chain. So in October 2020, Intrepid Travel became the first and only tour operator with a verified emission reduction target by the Science Based Target Initiative. And how do we actually kind of measuring our emissions across our operations and our trips? So especially around our trips, we actually have invested this year in recalculating our emission factors so that we are understanding what the emissions are at a product level rather than having an average emission factor by micro-region, style, or comfort. So we are actually breaking it down now at a product level to really understand all the aspects of the accommodations, the transport the customer takes, but also in terms of our supply chain or Scope 3, our near-term science-based target is a clear roadmap. It's our North Star to show us how quickly and how much we have to reduce our emission. When you look at our emission profile, Scope 1 is only around 10% from the vehicles we own. Around 7% is about Scope 2, from purchasing electricity, and more than 80% sits in our Scope 3 emissions in our value chain. We have an absolute target for our Scope 1 and 2, and then a physical intensity target actually for Scope 3. And we divide it between our FTE, so our staff in our offices, and then also for our customers and per trip per day emissions. We are now looking, as part of our decarbonization, I wanted to share what we do on our trips. So we have actually reviewed our top 50 selling trips for the flights within the trips that are under 1.5 hours. So for example, here in Egypt, we actually replaced these internal flights on some of the trips with a boat journey or an overnight train journey. As I said, 80% of our carbon emissions are actually generated in our supply chain. And what we see that we can really make an impact when we're working carefully with our suppliers to address those emissions and to reduce them. And that can sound sometimes really overwhelming, and you might also think here in the room, this is actually very hard to do, but actually it isn't. Because companies already have ongoing relationships with their suppliers. We might be using our guest house or our restaurants several times a week or even daily. But also we're already working with our suppliers on other important issues like health and safety. The climate crisis is not a competitive advantage. And we can have the most and the biggest impact when we are actually working together. At the moment, our team is busy auditing our supply chain so we can better understand where the issues are, where the opportunities are, and where we can help. The fact that the work that Intrepid might do with a supplier might benefit a competitor or another business. And for us, that is a win. Thank you.
Susan, thank you very much, and apologies again for changing over there the order. Another very compelling statement, especially the last sentence was shockingly interesting. Pre-competitive, as Glenn mentioned before also in his statement, it is something we see across destinations, across the private sector. It is something which some describe as net positive, and that is something the tourism sector claimed for a long time, and what your statements are manifesting over here, it is delivering step by step. We need more evidence, as you said, Suzanne, and to base our actions on and to prove our arguments and to others, to make them transparent and to make the tourism sector accountable for what he is delivering in the field of climate action, biodiversity, sustainability, and resilience at all. Dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. That was a very intensive panel. We finished 2 minutes later than officially recognized in the program. We thank you very much for the attention. Hope you have the possibility to engage here with our panelists. And as a closing remark, just so that you understand how serious we take that at UNWTO, we're convening this afternoon in the Green Zone at 4 o'clock the Committee of Tourism and Sustainability, which is the highest organ focusing in the UNWTO on the issues of sustainability for the very first time at a COP. This COP is different for us. This COP is about making climate action very important to tourism policy and implementation. Join us if your agendas allow. Otherwise, please, a last big recognition for these wonderful panelists, their commitment to implementation in the Glasgow Declaration. Thank you all very much for having joined us here today.
I think he wants to